r/NoSleep. Posted by u/JamFranz. The next door I opened could be my last. October 27, 2015. Simone, Dave, and I arrived at a club for a Halloween party. We didn't plan to stay long. It was a Tuesday and we all had to work the next morning. We joined the throng of people lined up and going in through the side door, but I realized I'd left my wallet in the car. We planned to meet up inside. The three of us were wearing these corny matching costumes, a tradition we did since we were kids, so it should have been easy enough to find each other. I will never forget the feeling, the allure of that side entrance door, as if everything that I could ever want was through it. So much so that at the time, the unnatural appearance of the room on the other side hadn't remotely concerned me. Neither had the fact that despite the number of people walking through the door, the room looked to be empty. I managed to pull myself away and back into the biting night air as everyone else went in. Some rational part of me won out, knowing I wasn't going to get very far without my ID, anyways. When I came back from the car, though, not only was the entire crowd gone, so was the door they'd been piling in through. There was nothing there but a brick wall. I don't know how it didn't hit me, or any of us, sooner. We'd been going there for years, and I had never seen a door on that side of the building. I walked in through the usual front entrance, but I couldn't find my friends anywhere, and when I asked around, no one inside had seen anyone else dressed like me. As I frantically roamed around the nearly empty club searching for them, I realized that I didn't see anyone that had been in line with them, either. I tried calling over and over but neither of them ever answered their phones. No one who went through that door has been seen since. For months, I spent my free time searching for answers online, and while I didn't really expect to find anything, it was something to distract me from the unanswered calls and texts, and continued silence on social media. Part of me held on to the thought that even if they weren't here, maybe they were still okay somewhere. Maybe I could find a way to bring them back. It was better than spending my sleepless nights reliving that evening on repeat, trying to convince myself that I'd only imagine the pounding on the walls around me, the muffled voices tinged with fear and pain, just audible over the music. To my surprise, I did find a few testimonies and documentation from other similar-sounding incidents over the years, although some had been difficult to verify or, based on my own experience, obviously fake. So, I started compiling my own notes from official sources, and what I learned by talking to witnesses. I really wish that I could say what I found made me feel better. But if it did, I wouldn't be sharing this. I learned that sometimes the door takes the place of one that you have seen, maybe even used, 1,000 times before. Other times, such as in our case, it appears in what moments prior had been only a blank wall. Although no one could say for sure what happens to those that go through it, the implications of what I did find made me sick. One thing I do know, once that door closes behind you, there is no coming back. Date of occurrence, October 30, 2007. Source, security camera footage, eyewitness interview. One can only speculate what was going through his head in his final moments, but it's safe to say that Will Reynolds was having a shit morning. He'd been invited to his first job interview after nearly a year of looking, and somehow he'd transposed the address, apparently only realizing his mistake after wandering through the wrong building for 15 minutes. So, there he was, running towards the elevator, likely hoping he could sprint across the city fast enough to only be extremely late, rather than miss it entirely. According to the potential employers, he had apparently attempted to call to let them know, but no one answered, because they were all sitting in a meeting room, waiting for him. His last known words were a mumbled, out-of-breath apology. Cameras captured him skidding to a stop in front of a door, one that was not recognized by employees or present on footage before, or since, and darting through it. We'll never know what he believed to be on the other side, we can only speculate, but we do know that Will never made it to the interview. Employees reported a muffled voice and knocking coming from behind that same wall for the next week or so, despite there being nothing other than the London skyline on the other side. It was at first hesitant, becoming frantic, frenzied, before dying down and eventually stopping. One of the witnesses told me in hushed tones over the phone how, not long after the knocking ceased, she saw the eventual seepage of pinkish sludge from the baseboards where the door had once been. She described it as something sour and coppery smelling that ate away at the hardwood floor. Unfortunately, this is only one of at least 10 suspicious disappearances reported as occurring on October 30, 2007, but what makes Will's unique is the camera footage. Unlike the incident back in '75 that were based only on eyewitness accounts and officially chalked up to mass hysteria, the one in '67 that has nearly become an urban legend. Unlike the decade of seedy cable game shows, dismissed as scripted, unlike the 1999 disappearances that I couldn't find a single person willing to talk to me about, unlike the many nameless others that are gone without a trace other than a stubborn, lingering stain. For the first time, there was undisputed footage showing a missing man entering a door that, other than in the few frames of fleeting footage, did not exist. There were photographs of the soupy liquid with bits of hair and teeth mixed in. Date of occurrence, October 26, 1999. Source, archived newspaper article. A reunion goes south, what happened to the missing Ganzoli family? An extended family books a banquet hall in Kearney, Nebraska for a reunion. When the owner arrives to clean and lock up that night, he doesn't see the family, but notices their vehicles and several personal belongings in the parking lot. When the cars still haven't moved several days later, he alerts the authorities. The entire hall is later deemed unusable and is demolished. The article does not say why, although it mentions something described only as disturbing, found inside. No members of the missing family were ever located. After I found the article about the 1999 disappearances, that's when I started seeing a pattern of when the door would show up, every 8 years, on the last Tuesday of October, without fail. I've still never figured out how to determine where. The few references I found in my research referred to it as the first door - supposedly based on its presence on a game show that aired off and on in the 1980s and early 90s, the kind of show that you'd only find late at night in the static between channels. Based on what I've learned, though, I've always thought that the last door would have been a more appropriate moniker. Date of occurrences, 1983 to 1991. Source, cable TV show, filming location unknown. The show seemed to air under several different names during that period, but the format was always the same. A man in an orange three-piece suit hosted what seemed to be a Jeopardy ripoff where the winner got to choose a prize behind one of several doors. The questions and answers were bizarre, things viewers had never heard of, and I myself could never find any other references to either. This prestigious institute is home to the largest collection of rare artifacts, ranging from Zhang Dynasty vases to the Charlottian-era collection. What is the Catadesmos Museum? The winners would, without fail, choose the first door. Even if they initially drifted towards another, they'd always sharply change direction. They'd always enter the first one, which would then slam shut behind them. The show would end with the host saying, "Let's give them a hand, folks," as the other players and even the studio audience would then follow behind them, all wearing matching expressions of overwhelming excitement as they too inexplicably went shuffling through that same first door. The contestants and audience never emerged again. Although frantic knocking and distant-sounding voices from the other side could sometimes be heard as the credits rolled, in pan shots you could tell there was nothing, no one, behind it. When first I learned about the 75 incident, I had a hard time locating witnesses, much less ones willing to talk to me. I didn't really blame them, especially having experienced something similar firsthand. The school janitor, who had also been in the stands that night, was the only one who returned my calls. He was kind enough to show me around the grounds of the long-abandoned school while he told me what he had seen. Date of occurrence, October 28, 1975. Source, eyewitness interview. The homecoming game at McKellar High School was expected to be unforgettable, a new stadium, a record-breaking year in terms of wins, and seniors offered college scholarships. And it was, just not in the way that anyone in the small town could have ever imagined. The team was expected to run out of the hallway of the athletics complex and onto the field, like they did for every home game. The band was geared up and playing, but the doors never opened, the team never emerged. The audience sat in confusion, as cheers turned to nervous laughter, then concerned whispers. There were searches for the players, the coaches, but they were nowhere to be found. The janitor, who asked me not to use his name, choked up as he described the sounds of sobbing, knocking, and scratching throughout the athletic building. I heard them back there for days, but even when we opened up the walls, we never found them. As bad as the sounds were, he told me that what haunted him more over the years was the silence that eventually followed. Not long after, the door to the field began to leak rancid-smelling viscous fluid for weeks, that ate away at the new turf. The missing coaches and team were never found, although several class rings would later be discovered in the partially melted plastic of the field. What happened in '67 was the largest single incident I've found evidence of, so far. Luckily, despite some modern sources claiming it was fabricated or an urban legend, I was able to find documentation. I'm extremely grateful for that, since eyewitnesses have been impossible to locate, that is, if they are still living at all. Date of occurrence, October 31, 1967. Source, microfilm. Pan Am's Flight 1919, fully booked and ready to depart from GSW to LAX, was delayed by the late arrival of the incoming plane. Perhaps the rush to get everyone aboard the Boeing 707 and off the ground was why it took so long for them to notice that something had gone wrong. The plane sat on the runway. As its new departure time came and went, air traffic control tried, and failed, to reach the pilots multiple times. When airport staff finally reopened the cabin door, the plane was empty, although those that boarded in search of the crew and passengers would later note that they heard frantic tapping on the windows and metal, and what sounded like voices, distant but pleading. The later presence of a thick, pinkish sludge that ate into the cement of the runway below was mentioned in the article, but never explained. On October 27, 1959, there were multiple disappearances reported across 3 continents. I found indications that on that day, at least 20 unassuming people walked through a doorway that they could have never realized would be their last. Of the better documented cases, there was one in particular that stuck with me over the years. Date of occurrence, October 27, 1959. Source, microfiche. Reno woman arrested for disappearance of family. Claims she saw them walk through the door to the dining room, but never saw them emerge on the other side. When interviewed, her only response, "I know they're still here, I can hear them screaming." I couldn't find anything earlier that was formally documented, although the rumors I've heard about what happened in that factory in 1935 still haunt me. I know the first door shows up at least once every 8 years. You can never be too careful, though. The price of that particular mistake is far too high. I took all the interior doors in my home off their hinges years ago, and when I'm out of the house, I only step through a door that I see others walk through first, once I make sure they come out on the other side. I've never been able to shake the consuming fear that the next door I walk through could be my last. I've been collecting this information for years now, but everyone, outside of the fringe forums, that I tried to warn dismissed me, and my concerns, as crazy. With us quickly approaching the last Tuesday of October 2023, I knew I had to keep trying. I knew that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night due to the sheer guilt if I didn't. I owe it to Simone, to Dave, and to the countless others. I'm sharing this with everyone I can in the hopes that one of these posts will make a difference. Maybe I can keep the first door from becoming someone's last. Because although I don't know where, I know something is coming soon, and I have the feeling it's going to be something big. Something terrible.